On today's episode of the Success Study, I'm here with Nick Inkster. Nick Inkster is the man behind Inkster Company, which owns some of your favourite bars, including the Church Bar, OGB, and many others. We're going to talk about Nick's journey through hospitality and what's allowed him to build a successful business here in Christchurch. So, welcome to the Success Study, Nick. Thank you so much for having us. For Inkster Company, what was your first bar or business that you opened up?
I've always loved my heritage, and also, I love Cathedral Square. That's the heart of our city. So I was like, well, OGB, that's got to be it. So basically, bought an apartment upstairs. I got myself into the body corporate of the building, figured out who was who and who owned what, and managed to get on the committee, and then leased the downstairs area for OGB bar.
What do you think was the reason that it became a successful bar? What brought people in the door?
So before I opened OGB, there were three hot spots. There was the casino, there was Mama Hooch, and there was Beretta. So they were three hot spots in Christchurch. That was where the most of the nightlife was going to. And I'd sit in my apartment and watch people from Beretta move past through the square, past OGB to Mama Hooch. And obviously the casino was up the road further. So they were walking past the square with nothing in it. So I thought, well, I'm gonna have to walk past OGB when I get open. So I wanted to do a different offering. I thought Christchurch was missing that sort of speakeasy, cocktail, table service kind of experience. So that's what I went about to do with OGB. And yeah, opening night, I still recall it. It was TV3 were there with cameras, we had flapper girls. It was just, I remember waking up the next morning and thinking, holy shit, what have I done? Here we go again.
Yeah.
And it's been 7 days every day ever since, 8 years later.
Wow. So moving on from that, what was the next bar that you went into?
So in 2020, 5 years later, I formed Inkster Company, looking at new sites. It was sort of time for me to sort of go again. At the same time, I joined forces with my good friends from the Limited Rugby Club, the Norton brothers, Andrew and Richard Norton. So we sort of teamed up, the three of us, and we formed the Inkster Company together, basically. And with that, we sort of built Austin Club. So Austin Club is the underground basement bar. It's quite unique. It's only small, it's niche, it's boutique, but it's a 1946 plus kind of era where the soldiers went out in the uniform and they'd get laid and they'd be the heroes of the day, So it's that whole kind of theme of cocktails, and it was a good time to be alive. So Austin Club's really kind of themed off that.
Yeah.
And with a sort of late night kind of nightclub vibe after midnight.
And tell me, you set a password.
Yeah, so the password, I've seen it done overseas and I thought it was really unique. I always figured it's quite interesting. If you build a fence, people will try and climb over it. So you put a password in as a barrier, people want to know that password and get through the door. So it really worked, and also for a marketing point of view, so many people were going through our socials and they were having to like our page or follow us. And as soon as they got the password, we'd get their information, their data. It was a great thing in that respect. Austin Club has the most followers of a bar in New Zealand, which is on Instagram, which is quite special.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But doesn't mean it's also busy, but it's quite niche too, but it's very popular with sort of people that love that sort of style of bar.
Yeah. So you've gone OGB, Austin Club, and then what's next for Inkster?
So Naval in Littleton was a little bar that we bought in 2021, just sort of during COVID really. So while everyone was sort of sitting around at home watching Netflix and wondering what was going to happen in the world, I sort of thought, I grew after the earthquakes, I'm going to grow during and after this pandemic.
Yeah.
So went away and purchased Civil Naval, and Civil Naval was the bar that I sat in 2012 and got inspired for OGB. So
Full circle moment.
Yeah, it's nice to it's quite nice to own the bar now and be in there and actually sit there by the fire and go, this is where I drew a lot of my inspiration from.
Yeah.
For OGB, which is where it all started. So yeah, we purchased Civil Naval, and then from that, I was only a month or 2 months later, we opened Paddy McNaughton's, which was a build we'd been going on for about a year. So it was just timing really.
Yeah.
It all happened at once, but we sort of almost doubled the business during COVID really in terms of the offering, the bars.
So then Paddy McNaughton's is next, and then
Yep.
was it Church Bar after that?
So
or-
church was attached to Paddy McNaughton. So church
Yeah.
was a 5-year restoration for us. So it was a big haul. You know, we had invested a lot. We had signed a 20-year lease. We'd risked everything, put everything on the line. So
Yeah.
it had to work. So, but that was our big go. So we were chipping away at the church. We had a lot of hold-ups with heritage trust councils, stonemasons, all that sort of stuff. But we sort of managed to get through it in the end. But while Paddy's was open, church was being still restored and rebuilt, we bought the Fox and Ferret in the Palms, which is another bar which kind of links to my story really. Was when I turned 18, my old man took me to the Fox and Ferret for my first legal beer.
Yeah.
So it was the first
Very
pub
cool.
I ever had a legal beer in. And it was sort of in a liquidation, so we sort of picked it up because I couldn't see it just closed down. So we took that over, and we can see the Fox and Ferret it doesn't suit the rest of our branding as such, but it's an old style English pub. It's way ahead of its time. We can see it like a Lone Star model where we could open up a Fox and Ferret in Timaru or Nelson or Queenstown and sort of move it around the country. So that's the plan with Fox and Ferret.
Yeah.
Obviously back then in 2013, my old man passed away, but just going back a little bit, he was the one that also inspired me because he was always the one saying, come back from Australia and build your bar. So
Yeah.
Christchurch is your home.
So it was a pretty surreal moment.
Yeah,
I
it
think
was
that.
a surreal moment to get the Fox and Ferret. So we took that, and then a year and a half later, we finally got the church open.
Wow.
It was basically a year ago, July 2023, we opened the church. And it's always interesting when you open a new venue. It's quite different from taking over a venue or creating a venue.
Yeah.
I love creating venues, but I also like to purchase a venue that's had good history and it's got a good story to tell. Civil Naval's got a great story to tell. Fox and Ferret has a good story to tell. And then that's what led us to the Prebbleton Hotel, which we took over a few months ago now.
Cool.
So the Prebbleton Hotel it's called Finnegan's Prebbleton Tavern, but we're going to rebrand it, bring it back to the original name, the Prebbleton Hotel.
Yeah.
And it's got a great story to tell there. The publicans and the proprietors there have owned it for 54 years.
Yeah.
And we believe their story needs to be told, and we'll do it by bringing back a good gastro pub for the people of Prebbleton.
Across your 7 establishments, is there a kind of rhythm or some kind of uniqueness to your offering that's allowed you to scale, or do you think it's just getting the basics right?
Yeah, my point of difference, I've always had a slogan saying I'm pouring the heritage back into Christchurch, pint by pint, Inkster Company's point of difference is old buildings. Exclude the Fox and Ferret, which is at the Palms. The rest of them are in old buildings. Even Austin Club, it's in an old basement.
Yeah.
The building's not, 1800s or early 1900s, but it's still, it's an old basement that has lots of history, lots of stories. So that's kind of our direction. Like, there's so many new bars opening up, and for me, I walk into a new bar and I feel like they're all the same. They're just kind of clean and sterile and nice lines, and everything's just perfect, which is great. There's that market, but I like a pub that's not perfect in terms of the frame's crooked on the wall. It's on an old stone wall. Hospitality deserves and should be in old buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, interesting when you talk about like an environment, particularly work environment, hospitality.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of good things from people that have worked for you or know people that work for Inkster Company. How do you, across the board with an industry such as hospitality that is notorious for bad hours and bad pay and high stress, how do you look after your staff here and create such a good community of workers in Inkster?
I've always said, I'm sort of creating a living room for the people of Christchurch, but also my staff and also all my musicians. I pay every Monday with my employees, so I treat my musicians as employees as well. So as long as they get their invoice in before Monday, they'll get paid with my staff on the Monday, Tuesday. So with that, we've created a pretty good family.
Yeah.
And it's not all about the individual bars now, it's more just about Inkster Company and the group. So, I've always been there on the floor for 5 years. I was wiping the tables, I was doing everything. I love it. I still do it now. I can't walk past a dirty table and not wipe it. In terms of my staff, it's been really hard to pull myself away from being their friends because, I'm still very much, I'm a hugger. Like we all sort of, we're like a family. So I'm always asking how they are. I know all their names. We've got over 100 employees now, so it is challenging sometimes to, especially the new ones that come on, it's trying to remember their names and acknowledging them. But Inkster Company's got 4 golden rules. Acknowledgement, so acknowledge everybody that comes into the venue. Then engage with that person, whether you give them a menu or a coaster, or just engage with that person, give them eye contact, tell them you'll be right with them. You know, people just want to feel that they're being looked after. They just don't want to be ignored. So as long as you engage with that person, they feel like they're, oh, sweet, you know, they understand if you're busy behind the bar, or, you know, they get it. Third is appreciation. Appreciate who you are, who your peers are, your colleagues, appreciate everything. And then fourth one is smile. So if I walk into my venues and I see a staff member not smiling, I know they're not appreciating their day or what they're doing. They're certainly not engaging with customers, and they're not acknowledging customers that come in the door. So yeah, I've always sort of lived by those 4 kind of golden rules, and it's kind of worked, and we have them plastered up back of house. And
it's about kind of creating a third space as well, isn't it? Like, it's nice for people when they come in somewhere and it feels familiar to them. It's not work, it's not home. It's that third space where people kind of come together and they can, you know, they know people there, maybe they're friendly with the bar staff, they remember their name.
Yeah.
There's actually a lot of research come out on those third spaces and the importance of it, just having a space to go to.
Yeah, correct. My staff will have their days off, and they'll spend their 2 days off in Inkster Company venues.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, what are you guys doing? You know, stay away from work. But that's exactly what, like you said, we've created a third space and they feel safe in. And also every Inkster Company employee gets a key ring, so that key ring allows them to get discount in all the venues.
Yeah.
So obviously going through, you know, hard times, food's not cheap, they can come and eat and drink in all the venues at a discounted price because they're an employee of Inkster Company. So that's been another factor that's really kind of brought the crew together. It's a nice thing to be able to do. And it's nice to, I'd rather them drinking in my venues than drinking somewhere else, even if it is discounted.
Yeah. What do you think on the journey, what do you think the biggest learning curve was for you, or the biggest mistake that you made?
Biggest mistake I made was growing too quickly. 2018, I sort of built OGB quite big, opened the restaurant, which was the hotel's restaurant at the time, so took it over, took a big lease on, hired 30 more staff, hired a sort of Michelin star chef, created a beautiful menu. OGB was #1 on TripAdvisor in terms of restaurant. It was busy, but we weren't making money. So it came, I think it was August 2018, you know, I had to sort of make redundant 38 staff, had to go through a whole restructure, which was, you know, coming from a builder on the tools into a company environment that I was the leader of. It was hard to have those conversations with all those people, especially when from the outside it looked all fluffy and smelling, you know.
And it's hard as well, those decisions, when it's not necessarily the staff's fault. They don't know what the accounts are looking like.
No.
They're doing well at their responsibility.
Correct.
Sure, the chef was cooking great food and the bartenders were doing really well and the waiters were, you know, being good at their jobs. But fundamentally, it's difficult when it's a business thing, and you just got to go, look, you know, I've got to take this one on the chin because I'm the business head of it.
That's
this
right.
Is my
So, you know, I have to be having those conversations and owning up to, you know, my mistakes. So it was sort of like a real learning curve for me that, okay, if I want to grow, I have to grow calculated. And I'm a half glass full guy, you know, like I needed someone that was half glass empty to counter me, because I'm just yes, positive, that'll work, that's going to be great, I've got a great idea here. So in 2020, when the Nortons joined in, they brought that half glass empty factor, and for the last 4 or 5 years we've been able to grow quite aggressively but sensibly with that sort of reasoning behind it. So yeah, I always think back to 2018, you know, like, you know, I was just having to shut down some of the business to keep what was OGB, which was the start, you know. So, you know, OGB is still there today, 8 years on, because it's consolidated and it's become a healthy business. It didn't need that restaurant then. End of this month, we've got the restaurant reopening. So it's taken, 5 years to really get OGB match fit to reopen the restaurant. Which is going to be exciting because we're ready now for that. Because restaurant's different to bar. You know, they'll eat fried food every day with a pint.
Yeah.
But people will go to a restaurant maybe on a special occasion once a month if you're lucky. But we obviously, you know, so restaurant's a tough game, and I'm not a restaurateur. Certainly wasn't a pub guy either, but I know the pub game and the bar game a lot more than a restaurant game. But I think we're ready to take that restaurant step.
Yeah. So the idea behind the success study is to interview successful business owners to kind of bring insight into their journeys and maybe inspire the next generation. If you were talking to a younger business owner, maybe someone getting into business for the first time, if you had to give them one piece of advice, what would that advice be?
To always make sure you pay your PAYE to the IRD. So that's seen as stealing from your employees if you don't pay your PAYE. So when I first started out 8 years ago, no one gave you that advice. You don't get taught that at high school. So I was always paying my GST. I PAYE, you know, wait, don't have money, right? You know, so, and then I got in trouble with the IRD coming at me going, you haven't paid your PAYE. Oh, I've paid my GST. No, you pay your PAYE first.
Yeah.
So that can get a lot of business owners in trouble because that's your employees' money that you're paying for them, you know what I mean? So it's sort of, if you're not banking that and paying the IRD that, then it's seen as stealing. So that's a very important lesson that I learned early on.
Yeah.
I'm lucky I learned it earlier on than later on. Yeah.
Perfect. And then if people wanted to find you or wanted to go to one of your venues, what would you recommend?
So OGB is my baby, but right now I think Church Pub is my favourite bar. So I would, if you want a pint, pour it in a good old heritage building in Christchurch. The church is the oldest stone building in the central city of Christchurch from 1864. It opened in 1875, so there's stone on this wall, which is the oldest stone in Christchurch. So come and enjoy a pint in this beautiful old church.